Funded Today Nation, welcome back to Get Funded Today, the premier podcast on crowdfunding and all things small business related. In our last masterclass, Thomas interviewed Greg Mercer of junglescout.com. That was a one-on-one interview, and Greg dropped all of his secrets about how to dominate Amazon. So you're going to really want to give that one a listen if you haven't yet. Now today, we got a really hyped up title for you, but we think it's absolutely accurate. How to turn your website into a cash machine. Let's go.
The Funded Today podcast is brought to you by fundedtoday.com. Funded Today is a premier marketing and video agency. From startups to crowdfunding to Amazon and beyond, Funded Today has helped their clients generate hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue. If you'd like help launching or growing your business, visit www.fundedtoday.com to speak with one of their experts.
Welcome back to Get Funded Today, the Funded Today podcast. I am Zach Smith.
And I'm Thomas Alvord.
In our last episode, Thomas had a one-on-one interview with the Greg Mercer of junglescout.com, revealing how you can gain a distinct advantage over your competition on Amazon. If you're on Amazon right now, if you're planning to launch your product on Amazon someday soon, you'll want to go back and give that podcast a listen, go back and review it. And remember, we do have our ultimate crowdfunding success guide available now, fundedtoday.com/guide. According to one of our beta testers, here's what he said about our guide. The Funded Today crowdfunding guide unilaterally blows away any other guides that I've seen with respect to quality of content. Hopefully you, our faithful podcast listeners, and the market at large will agree. Download it, read it, put the tips into practice, and then let us know of your successes because we can't wait to hear from you. And we put a ton of effort into that guide. I think you're going to love it. And finally, if you've ever gotten anything helpful out of our podcast so far, to help us continue helping you, please rate us on iTunes. It only takes a few seconds, but it makes a world of difference to us. And leave a comment or two on our website, fundedtoday.com/podcast, telling us what you think about this episode, other episodes, and what you'd like to learn more about in future podcasts that we will have. We'd really appreciate it. And every 5-star review really helps us spread the tips, tactics, and techniques we've personally used to make a ton of money and create great lives for ourselves with you and others. So thank you so much for that. We are really loving this podcast, and I hope you're getting a lot out of it as well. Now today, we're circling back around to perhaps our most popular series, Life After Crowdfunding. And this may be the most practical episode in the series so far. The title, Life After Crowdfunding, How to Turn Your Website into a Cash Machine. Thomas, what do you have for us?
It's an interesting question because we have worked and consulted with so many different businesses, entrepreneurs, and I think often the idea is I'm going to create my product, I'll put it on my website, and I'll go make money. And so often that doesn't happen. It's important to know what are the elements that are going to allow you to make your website a cash machine where it can make you $100,000, $1 million plus every year. To get it out of the way, at a minimum, you got to set your website up the right way. That is not going to be sufficient, right? Just doing that's not enough, but it's important to make sure you get your website set up the right way, meaning it needs to be professional. It needs to be optimized. You need to make sure you have your tracking set up with Google Analytics and your Facebook pixel, your Google AdWords pixel to get your hosting set up. And it doesn't really matter if you're on WordPress or Shopify. That doesn't matter as much.
It's important you say that too, Thomas. A lot of people seem to get bogged down with details, myself included. I remember 10, 11 years ago when I was doing a lot of different e-commerce related marketing, even before Funded Today, I would spend so much time being like, oh, do I need this WordPress plugin? I don't even think there was Shopify really doing much back then, but nowadays Shopify has so many different add-ons and plugins and all these other upsell options. And it's like, what should I do? What should I add? And you can have analysis paralysis instead of, like you said, get the things done that need to be done. Get your Google Analytics set up. Get your Facebook pixel set up. Pick WordPress, pick Shopify, pick something, set it up. It doesn't matter that much. What matters is your optimization, your professionalism. I think that's a huge takeaway for a lot of people because it's very easy to pretend to play business. I call these people entrepreneurs, and you just spend your whole life wanting to be an entrepreneur, faking like you're an entrepreneur, but you're never actually doing things entrepreneurs do. You're just building and tinkering away and never creating anything of value. In fact, I would probably say most entrepreneurs fall into that. I even had past business partners and they would just build and never sell, and never do anything related to actually turning their idea into something you could be proud of. It was always just an idea that kind of stuck in their head or whatever their vision or dream of what that idea could become. And they never really even brought it to the world, whether because of analysis paralysis and all these choices or because it's just easier to build than it is to actually take action. So set your website up the right way.
And I love what you say. Don't just focus just on your website, because you can optimize. But if you're not looking at other elements that are actually a lot more critical, then you're going to fail. Meaning you can run A/B tests using experiments with Google Analytics, where you're A/B testing your traffic, seeing what page converts better than the other page. Those are critical. Those are important. And I don't want to dive into those, because those aren't the things that actually make your website a cash cow, make your website generate sales, right? Really, I think the first thing that people need to be looking at is having a realistic expectation. It seems like we work with hundreds, even thousands of entrepreneurs, and they haven't really thought this through about what their expectations are. Thinking in terms of, what is my CPA, or what is my cost per acquisition? And CPA can be an acronym that could apply to different things, right? You could have a campaign where you're running traffic and you're getting people to opt in to your list. And you could have a CPA metric in that regard. What's your cost per acquisition for a new email? In this case, I'm talking about, what's your cost per acquisition to generate a sale or to generate a new customer?
Now, Thomas, backing up just a second here, you know how much I love social triggers and behavioral psychology. So just a thought. Do you think people have such unrealistic expectations because of Funded Today? Because, and by the way, huge milestone today. So give us a shout out. We have just crossed $250 million raised for nearly 3,000 campaigns across the world. Today was the day. We hit it a couple hours ago, I believe, $250 million. So is that why? Is that why people have unrealistic expectations? Or is it just because everybody thinks their baby's the cutest darn thing in the world and it can't possibly be ugly and the market can't possibly not want it? What happens with these unrealistic expectations? Where do they come from?
I think it's myopia, which I've talked about before, right? It's,
love that word.
Entrepreneurs who are myopic in thinking their product is the most amazing thing and they can't see outside of that, right? So I think that's part of it, right? They just assume, I'm going to launch this, everyone's going to love it, it's going to go gangbusters, and I'm going to make millions. And that simply is not the case. Look at the great companies of today, Amazon, Google. Look at how many new ventures they've rolled out that have completely failed, right? Flat on their face, even with their resources, their branding, everything.
Even their current ventures. I mean, look at Tesla. Their quarterly earnings statement was, again, a huge loss of millions and millions of dollars. I think the quarter before and the quarter before that, they had some profit. But even when they're successful, suddenly now they're not successful again. And they've just lost millions of dollars on a product that kind of was revolutionary in some ways, even though that's their core business, the electric car. And these are the greatest companies in the world, like you said, Thomas. And even they sometimes struggle for break even. And look at their brand appeal and look at who they relate to and look at their marketplace.
Exactly. I think part of it is when we work with somebody on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, and we then transition and we're working with them on Amazon and on their website, we run into a situation where the cost per acquisition, the cost to generate a sale, both in terms of the marketing that was directly tracked, meaning we spend $10,000 in ads, and directly tracked from that ads, we generate $40,000 in sales. Or we spent $10,000 in ads, and overall, maybe only $10,000 was tracked via ads, but overall, the campaign or the product raised $40,000. It creates this idea that you're always going to have that return, when the reality is you're always going to have your best returns in terms of ad spend when you're on a platform, when you're on Kickstarter, when you're on Amazon, because you're basically tapping into a community that's giving you additional traffic, organic traffic. That's why you launch on those platforms. That's why you place your product on those platforms. So you have to realize your cost per acquisition on your website is always going to be lower. And I think a lot of people don't realize that.
That's well said. If you ever work with Funded Today, you'll hear us talk about positive externalities all the time. You might spend $1 to track for $1, but overall you might track for $3 or $5 or even $6 or $10 if you have something that's converting really well. But that extra $2, $3, $9, whatever it is, in addition to your ad spend, is that positive externality that comes because of, like what Thomas mentioned, being on a bigger platform, on Amazon, Kickstarter, Indiegogo, on that sort of thing. And there's one more thing that I want to hint at on this topic. And Thomas and I were actually analyzing a couple client campaigns. I believe it was yesterday. And we were going through some different campaigns. And we talked about a USP, your unique selling proposition. And here was the takeaway to set your website up the right way. And Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you said it like this. You need to be able to look at that page, the top fold, picture a newspaper back in the day. It was called the top fold because the big headline was right there on the fold before you open it up. And that determined whether you wanted to read the newspaper or open it up or continue reading or just throw it in the trash or recycle it or whatever. Anyway, your website on the top fold, so before you even scroll, right when you see it, whether that's mobile, iPad, desktop, whatever, needs to be optimized for that as well nowadays because so many people are on mobile. On the top fold, your unique selling proposition has to be readily visible, available, and clear. What are you selling? Why does it matter to me? In the first 3 seconds, 10 seconds? What is it, Thomas?
In the first 3 seconds.
3 seconds.
What is it? What's the benefit? And it also depends, but this is especially useful for a startup, for a new business that doesn't have a brand reputation. If you go to McDonald's website, you don't need to know what McDonald's is. Everybody knows, right? If you go to Apple's website, it doesn't need to say, hey, we create cell phone gadgets and earbuds, right? Everybody knows that already. So depending on where you're at and how much the industry knows about you and who you are is going to influence what your messaging is going to be.
I just did a test just to see, and I just typed in apple.com just now. Here's their top fold. iPhone XR. All screen design, longest battery life ever in an iPhone, fastest performance, studio quality photos. That's a pretty dang good unique selling proposition for the iPhone XR, and that's what they're featuring on their page.
They're doing what you just said, not about their brand or company, but about their latest product.
It's just a particular landing page to feature the iPhone XR.
Because we'll look at websites, okay, they sell watches. What's unique? What's different? And you can't really tell. And I've actually come across websites. And again, it comes back to the branding and who your audience is, right? If you're B2B and your audience knows who you are, then maybe it doesn't matter. Sometimes I go to a website, though, I don't even know what they do or what it's about. And I go Google their name and try to find a Wikipedia about them maybe to see what they are. Or I go to their about page to see what they do because I can't really tell from their homepage right away. You need to build a good website. And going back to this idea of your CPA, one thing a lot of people don't realize, because you were asking before, Zach, why do people get it wrong? A lower priced item is actually harder.
And what's low price, Thomas? Is there a certain figure you could give to our listeners? Or
sure. Imagine if you have a product that sells for $1. You would have to be able to run paid traffic for less than $1. And then even if you had a 10% conversion rate, incredible conversion rate, a typical e-commerce conversion rate would be maybe 1 to 4%, depending on your price point.
And just to recap what Thomas means by conversion rate, that means if you had 1,000 visitors come to your page and you had a 10% conversion rate, 100 of them would purchase your $1 product.
That's right.
If you had a 10% conversion rate.
So what happens when you have a lower price point, it's harder to be able to generate traffic profitably. And on the flip side, let me give an example. Let's say you have a product that you're selling for $3,000 and you're able to get clicks or traffic for 30 cents per click. You could spend $1,000 in marketing and generate 3,000 clicks, and you could have less than a 1% conversion rate. If you just get one sell, you generate so much money in revenue. And so the lower the price point, the harder. Typically, under 20, it makes it a little bit harder. It's still feasible. And that's where you need to think about, okay, how can you have bundles or upsells or cross-sells, which we'll get to in a second. If you have a price point that's $50, $100, $200, it's going to be easier. Again, if you have something $10, $5, it's going to be really hard if that's all you're selling because you can't really spend money to make money. by the time you spend $5, you might have to spend $10 to get enough traffic to generate one sale. And if you're selling it for $5, it just doesn't work. Now, if you were selling it for 50, then it could work. So people need to realize, okay, what's my product currently selling at? And another thing, I don't know how many entrepreneurs look at this, but what is your typical CPA for your industry? That's a metric that's not always going to be readily out there, but it's something you need to look at and go evaluate. For example, if you're selling Uber as a service, right? Not a product, but as a service, your cost per acquisition, and again, they don't really have these numbers public, but you would need to know, are we going to have to spend maybe $50, $100, $200 to get a new customer? What is that cost per acquisition?
It might be hard to visualize what you and I were looking at yesterday, Thomas, when we were studying a little bit on Uber, but it was that trough, right? Where they spend, and they're negative net revenue, negative net profit forever. But then they reach the trough, the tipping point, where they've acquired enough customers now to handle their ad spend, to handle their cost per acquisition. And because of their residual income, in this case, Uber falls under a SaaS because even though people aren't necessarily paying a monthly fee, they're using the ride service several times per day. So it acts the same as a software as a service or a residual income model. And eventually they reach a break even, and then even a tipping point where they start to become profitable from a revenue standpoint. And I think that's important to consider as well. What is your customer lifetime value? It might cost you $100 to get that customer, but how many SKUs do you have? How many different products do you have? And I think that leads pretty well, unless you wanted to finish anything off with this topic, in terms of multiples and the strategy that you need to do as an e-commerce business by thinking in terms of multiples, multiple SKUs, multiple channels, multiple products, customer lifetime value. Where else can I create value for my customers so that they'll open up their pocketbooks and give my business more money instead of just selling them one thing? Because once you've sold them one thing, there's nothing else to sell them if they don't need it again, if it's not reusable or residual in nature.
And I would add, Zach, just finishing up with the CPA, entrepreneurs, business owners need to think through and recognize, what CPA am I aiming for? And what's my industry going to look like? What is my product going to look like? Because if you can generate a new customer at cost, that's not necessarily bad, depending on your strategy, what your growth goals are. Also, going back to Uber, is your strategy for growth right now? Because if it's not profit, because you have capital, and it might be to dominate a market, then you're just going for growth. But if you're just bootstrapping it and it's all about profit, you really need to be cognizant about what you're doing, because you don't want to be in a spot where you can't spend money to make money. Otherwise, you don't have a business. You do not have a business if that's the case, because you can't spend money on Facebook ads or Google AdWords, drive traffic to your website, get new customers, and make it profitable.
It's one of our maxims at Fun Today, and it's worth repeating. If you can't spend money to make money, you don't have a business.
Yeah. And that's where one of the greatest difficulties that I've seen, Zach, working with people coming from Kickstarter, right? If we're working with other businesses that have an established business and they're coming to us and they have multiple products they're already selling on their website, it's a much different story. But very often, the Kickstarter creator has an idea to start a business, but only has one product idea in mind. And one of the key takeaways, if there is one from this podcast, is that entrepreneurs, business owners, they need to think in terms of multiples, like you were just saying, right? Multiple products, multiple channels, multiple sales.
And credit to the entrepreneurs who are listening to this podcast. I've been working with a pretty close friend. Just yesterday, he and I were chatting for a little bit on Skype, and he said, "Hey, I'm thinking of changing my name of this product that I'm inventing to a different name because I believe what I've created here could lend itself well to multiple SKUs, multiple different products." And I said, "Wonderful. Where did you, that's great. Absolutely do that." And it made me think of other people that we've worked with in the past. I remember when we worked with the Basics wallet, it was just the Basics wallet. And for all we knew, that was all they were ever going to create. But they rebranded probably a little bit late. and became nomadic, and they became a lifestyle brand. And now they have a wallet, a watch, backpacks, travel gear, all kinds of other things, because they realized you can't necessarily make a living selling one product. I mean, a wallet's pretty ubiquitous. Everybody could potentially use one, but even still, you need that multiple SKUs. So credit to a lot of the entrepreneurs who are thinking like that upfront before you've ever even sold one of your products. What else can I sell? Where else can I bring value to this idea that I've created? I'm actually thinking of our product of the week that we'll introduce a little bit later, but basically it's a Q-tip, a swab, and it's the last swab you'll ever use. It's a reusable cotton swab. It's called Last Swab. I look at that product and I say, well, what's going to be their next product if we're thinking about multiple SKUs? And in a case like this, just now I've realized that may be the anomaly. That's one product where that might be all you need. If that's all you have and that's all you sell, because every person on the planet has probably used a Q-tip or a cotton swab before, right? The thing you stick in your ear to clean your ear or apply makeup or whatnot. Probably everybody's used one of those before. They are dealing with a very, very ubiquitous market. And if you remember our formula for success, it's ubiquity plus innovation or tech plus a cool, compelling story gives you a huge chance for success. Well, they've got the ubiquity covered. Everybody and their dog could use a cotton swab. They've got the innovation covered because now you literally can use the same cotton swab forever instead of buying that pack of 1,000 that everybody usually buys. And the story is pretty amazing too, because they've created a product where they're trying to improve the environment and make it so that landfills aren't filled up with used, gross cotton swabs. So most of the time, with perhaps the exception of Last Swab, but even they probably have some ideas for a future product or something that can go along the lines of great ideas, innovative products that protect the environment, but are also solving huge problems, and then creating multiple SKUs, multiple products based upon whatever that brand or company that you want to create has. So,
and the real power, Zach, and the reason behind this, if you have one product that you're selling, if you can acquire and generate a sell at cost, meaning you spend $50 on marketing and you're able to generate a sell for $70, but then you have maybe $20 in COGS, your cost of goods sold, your manufacturing, shipping, etc. So you're a break even. You're not making any money, but you just generated a sell. That is a valuable thing to now have that contact, to have that email, to then be able to sell them additional products if that customer likes your brand and likes your product.
And that's that customer lifetime value point. I think it's really important that you added that caveat at the end. If they like you, if they resonate with your brand, if they liked your original product, because now you have the customer lifetime value. You have a customer who is free to you to sell whatever else you want to sell in the future that's probably going to trust you because they had a great first experience with your brand or company.
Mm-hmm. And right away, you can offer an upsell or a cross-sell. And the difference between those, an upsell would be the same product, but just a higher quality. It would be like going and buying a new car, but they upsell you to the next model up or the next model up. So it's still the same car. It's now you just have automated windows or you have a better engine, right? That would be an upsell. And then a cross-sell would be they sell you, hey, you can get car washes for life, for an extra $200 or whatever. Often they just throw like a car wash in sometimes.
The easiest way to think of upsell and cross-sell for me, and the way Thomas explained it, is very simple. You go in to buy a car and maybe you want to buy a Toyota, but they sell you a Lexus. That's an upsell. Then once you've bought the Lexus, they say, hey, we'll give you this leather protector and unlimited car washes and oil changes and tire washes for life. That would be your cross-sells.
Yeah, cross-sell isn't the same product. It's just something that's complementary. And you want to have those in your business. And you might not know what they are right away. You'll discover what those are over time. The iPad did not exist when Apple came out with the iPhone. iPhones didn't even exist. Smartphones didn't exist when Apple first came out with the personal computer, right? So those complementary products will continue to evolve. You don't have to have it all at once, but you need to be thinking about that. And then another thing you need to be thinking about is multiple channels. You never want to have just one of anything. Just one credit card processor or just using PayPal. Because what if they freeze your account and all of your sales dry up because you can't accept payments or your
just
funds
Google
are frozen?
PayPal nightmares and you'll see lots of stories of that happening.
Mm-hmm. So multiple channels, right? You want to be in retail, brick and mortar, if that's part of your strategy, on your website, on Amazon, etc. So,
even Indiegogo in demand might be a good spot to mention for them, since we're Life After Crowdfunding series, Thomas. We had a whole episode on that. I think it'd be important to be on there as long as you can, really. It's another channel.
That's true, yeah. And part of this, right, is discussing how do you make your website a cash machine? How does multiple channels affect your web sales? Because in a way, you might think, well, won't that detract from my web sales? Because if people can purchase this elsewhere, then my web sales are going to suffer. And in a way, yeah, you could look at it because your sales are going to be distributed across multiple channels. But let me give just one example of one of our customers or clients, which is the Bowbacks brand, the travel jacket. They now have pants. But Bowbacks, we helped them raise $9 million on Kickstarter. They got picked up and were placed in airports all around the US, maybe even internationally. I'm not sure about internationally, though. What they were able to do is they were able, and this is only when they had one product. Now they have multiple SKUs, multiple products. They were spending money driving traffic to their website, even though it was at a break even or even at a little bit of a loss, because they knew we're running so much marketing, we're getting our brand in front of so many people. And yes, directly tracked on our website, we're not generating a lot of money. But if we look at what's happening in the retail stores, it's actually increasing our sales. And again, there's not a one size fit all, because if I'm not mistaken, I should check because I read this a while back. If I'm not mistaken, I think Nike actually had an opposite strategy, right? Their brand is so prevalent and so strong that instead of running marketing to try to drive people to retail locations, they were really focusing in terms of increasing their profit to their own website because they have a much bigger margin. Instead of selling their product with the 50% markup that retail would have, if they're selling it directly, direct to consumer on their website, they're capturing so much more of that profit. But again, it comes back to what's your strategy? Is it growth or is it profit? And in this case, with Nike, they already have the brand. Everybody knows who Nike is. So that growth and that branding, yeah, it's still important, but it's not as critical for them as saying, hey, how do we increase our profit in this day and age where brick and mortar stores are going out of business, where malls are going out of business? What's our new strategy? What's our new game plan? Well, it was, let's take the stuff and drive more of the traffic back directly to us. So again, what's your strategy? But having multiple channels is what will allow you to be able to have your website be a cash machine. If you only have your website with one product, it's going to be incredibly hard. If you're selling just one wallet on your website, it's going to be super hard to really scale up your marketing for your website.
It's one of our criteria for working with people, right, Thomas? If they only have one product and all they have is a website, most of the time we say it's not going to work. If you'd like, we can do a due diligence test. It's going to cost you X number of thousands of dollars, but quite frankly, your chances are about 1 in 1,000 of having this work out.
Unless it's in a unique niche that has demand and there's low competition, then in that case, it could work. But if you're a Me Too and you're competing on Google AdWords with a lot of other advertisers, and it's only a one-time purchase like a wallet, right? If it's like toilet paper, that would be more like an Uber strategy, right? It's the customer acquisition. Yeah, toilet paper is not that amazing, right? It doesn't sound like an amazing business, but yeah, it's ubiquitous, and it's something if you had a brand that people like, they could buy again and again and again for 50 years or more, right? Including their kids, if people even have brand preferences for toilet paper. But the point is, if you had that, you have a lifetime value. Whereas if you have a one-time product that once people buy, they're not going to buy it again, and you're only selling on your website, it's going to be hard. Now, that doesn't mean you can't still make it a profitable business, right? Because perhaps on Amazon, that would be a place where, because of organic traffic and SEO, you'd be able to rank higher and get that traffic. So again, every strategy is different, but the key takeaway, think in terms of multiples.
Now, Thomas, can I share one example as well, kind of in this same line of thought?
Of course.
So our very first client at Funded Today, the Rue Sport, Brenda and Earl Brundage, they actually, even today, literally Thomas can attest to this because they were at the Boston Marathon and they ran into my uncle who happened to be there supporting my cousin who was running in his first Boston Marathon. Anyway, long story short, the Rue Sport, essentially since inception, has leveraged the power of expos, expositions, trade shows to sell their product. And by doing so, and I know this because I've been their e-commerce consultant forever, their website, their Shopify store, their Infusionsoft setup, all of that actually generates a spike at the end of every single expo. It's crazy. Might be a couple $1,000. I've seen it as high as 10,000 before. The reason is because they give a little coupon code. I think it's 10% off or 5% off or something, depending. And it's just a little insert. Hey, did you like this Rue Sport? Know somebody else who'd like one? Here's our website. And so they get a pretty good return. I think they maybe do 2-to-1 return. So if they spend 10 grand on an expo, they might make 20,000 over a weekend. But then they get that huge spike at all these expos. And after you've been to like 500 expos, which I think that's even understating how many they've been to, maybe they've been to closer to 1,000. I'm not sure. I know they're at an expo like every other day, and Thomas could attest to this. But their website is constantly getting sales from all over the country, even internationally now, and in Canada and some other places where they've been, because of all these little coupon codes that they've distributed around the world, and just because of their foot traffic from all these expos and trade shows. And so don't discount some of these old school strategies of expo to website to long-term customer value, because they can be very, very beneficial. And the Rue Sport has created a really good brand name by leveraging that type of a strategy.
And going along with that, if they only were selling on their website, I think they'd be in a very tough spot.
Oh, absolutely.
So
absolutely.
That multi-channel, multiple channels, multiple SKUs, multiple sales, customer lifetime value, that's the power of creating a website that is a cash machine. And you'll notice we're not diving in. We mentioned it, but it's not how do you optimize this or tweak that.
Nope.
They're much broader items that you need to be thinking about in terms of your business to be able to have that.
Go back and listen to our 80-20 episode for why we think this way, because if you do just these things, that's the 20% that's going to yield you 80% of your results. And that's really what every business owner wants and dreams of. Now, Thomas, to wrap up the episode today, I want to get into kind of just bringing it all together. So we're wrapping it up, but we're bringing all of these topics together. So our final topic, embrace your email list. What does that mean, and how does that relate to creating a website that just absolutely dominates and prints cash for you? How can you leverage that properly, and what does that even mean, embrace your email list?
As I see things, there are maybe 4 ways, well, a handful of ways that you can get traffic to your website or perhaps to your app, right? The first would be if you have a brand like Facebook or Uber or Amazon. It's a service, right? Even though Amazon, you're buying things, it's a service to help you with shopping, right? And so people just naturally come back because of what you're providing. If you're an e-commerce store selling a product or selling a service, that's probably not the case, right? There's not some utility, some value that they come back for just for that. That's free. But there is that, right? And then after that, you have your SEO, depending on how you're ranking for certain keywords. For a new startup, for a small, medium-sized business, usually an SEO strategy, which we'll go over in some future episodes, is going to take longer to build out. So really what you're left with is paid traffic as well as your email list as 2 additional ways. I guess you could talk about affiliates, but again, that's totally hit or miss and not a huge thing for most e-commerce sites. So your traffic, paid traffic, we've already talked about a lot. You're spending for clicks, whether it's on Facebook, Google, Pinterest, Twitter, anywhere else, but you're paying for the clicks to get to your website. That costs money. Yeah, it's guaranteed traffic, but it's guaranteed to cost you money. So one of the most guaranteed ways to drive traffic back to your website at virtually no cost is your email list. Because once you have that email on your email list, yes, you'll have attrition. Yes, people might not be interested or will opt out. But generally speaking, you will be able to send out an email, and different industries will vary. You might have between a 10 to 20% open rate. And MailChimp, if you Google average open rate, average click-through rate, and include MailChimp in the search, MailChimp has pages where with millions of customers and billions of emails sent for different industries, they'll show you here's benchmarks, here's what you can expect.
We should link to that in the show notes. That's a really cool thing.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that. So if you have, say, an email list of 10,000 people and you have a 2% click-through rate, okay, if I send out an email, I'm going to drive 200 visitors to my website. If on average, 5% of your past customers will buy, then you can say, okay, I know I can send out an email. I'll generate 10 sales on average, and maybe my average price point's $200, and I'm going to generate $2,000 from every email that I send out. Now, this is where you also need to have multiple products, multiple SKUs, because if you just have one product and all you do is send out an email saying, hey, check out this product, and maybe if you have a wallet, you have different designs. Hey, we just came out with this new design, or hey, it's Christmas, we have this promo, but different campaigns that you could run with your email marketing. But the power of that email, once you've captured that email, you can continue to market to that individual, to that customer or potential customer again and again and again, and your cost is virtually zero.
Now, Thomas, I want to give a little master takeaway to this point as well, simply because email was kind of my forte. It's kind of how I started, and I've spent millions of dollars and built hundreds of thousands of different email lists over my life in terms of all the people I've worked with and then the different email lists that I own as well. And I want to talk about ownership. It's really easy nowadays to spend money on Facebook and generate lots of clicks. Before, it was really easy to do that on Google and not necessarily spend a ton of money through Google AdWords, PPC, pay-per-click, that kind of thing. Facebook's kind of the new thing there. You've got Snapchat, Twitter, Pinterest, Reddit, a lot of other places where you can spend money to generate clicks. But like Thomas said, it costs money. And here's the thing. You don't own those assets. Facebook could go away, as crazy as it sounds. MySpace did essentially go away. You don't see a lot of people spending money on MySpace nowadays to generate traffic and clicks to whatever. But with your email list, no matter what happens, no matter what becomes the next Facebook or the next Snapchat or the next Twitter or whatever, you can take that email list with you and use that to build up that new community for whatever becomes the next social media platform, whatever's beyond social, artificial intelligence, AI, virtual reality, who knows? The point is, a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we don't think in terms of ownership. We don't think in terms of assets. And your email list is an asset. Like Thomas mentions in our show notes here, and he may have already said this, but just to hit on it again, Indiegogo, their strongest asset, and literally probably the only reason that keeps them in business, all of the thousands of creators that have used Indiegogo's platform have sent millions of backers to their campaign. And Indiegogo, smartly and wisely, has captured those backers and given them a good experience on the platform. And then they email them a couple times a week and say, hey, I know you backed this campaign. You might also like these campaigns. And a simple strategy like that continues to make Indiegogo hundreds of thousands of dollars every single time that email gets sent out. And we're the same way. We have lots of different email lists with hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And we continue to build our email list because we realize the power of email in the sense that it is an asset that you own. You're not renting it like you are Facebook. You're not borrowing traffic like you are from Google AdWords and pay-per-click. And I think that's a very powerful distinction and something every entrepreneur needs to do. Even in 2019, email is the most powerful asset that a company controls. I would say. Agree or disagree, Thomas?
I will disagree slightly.
Okay.
I would say, and I'm one that hates branding because I don't think branding matters.
It's funny you say that too, because I know where you're going. I was going to say that too, where it's like we both hate branding, but we realize there's something to be said about somebody who spent the millions of dollars necessary to build that brand that everybody recognizes. And of course, that would be your number one asset.
When you can buy two competing shoes and one's Nike and one's another brand, you go with Nike. Yep. And it's not because they have an email list. It's not because of anything. It's because their brand is so strong and the trust, there's so much trust there that we go and we pay the extra money. We pay the premium to get the Nike or to get whatever the brand might be. I would say that truly is the greatest asset a company has.
Mm-hmm. We've come a long way in realizing that too. If you asked us even a couple of years ago, we might not say what we're saying now, but now that we realize branding a little more, and Funded Today is obviously trying for more of a branding approach as well, we've noticed the power that comes with branding.
But I would clarify, right? Because you want to do it smart. As an internet marketer, as a startup, as an entrepreneur, as a small, medium, even a large business, right? You want to track your marketing. And it's called direct response marketing. For every dollar you spend, you want to know how much you're raising in revenue. And really, the genesis of direct response marketing was mail marketing, sending pitches, sending letters in the mail, right? Mail catalog orders, and seeing what the return was, and A/B testing different copies, A/B testing different envelopes, A/B testing different writing. They would test all of that because they would know we spend X amount to raise Y. And they would test so many different factors, and it would be a science. And with the web, we actually take that for granted because back in the day, that used to not be the case. You see more and more companies like Google that are trying to build things out saying, here is your cross-channel impact. You spent this much in marketing here, but here's what the sales did over here. Amazon recently, within the last year, rolled out some marketing, and you could actually see in terms of searches and marketing that you're running on Amazon, how many of those people who engaged with your ads actually then went and made a purchase on your website. Again, you have cross-channel attribution and how that all breaks down. And again, that's a lot to dive into, and we're not going to here. But the point is that as a startup, as an entrepreneur, as a business, you always want to track what is your return on ad spend? What is your return on your marketing? And branding historically has not been that, right? And how do you gauge that, right? Oh, we put up, and I'm sure there's ways they do it, but here's another billboard for McDonald's. What's the impact on that for the store closest to that billboard, or for the store 150 miles down the road when somebody's stopping in Vegas on a road trip, right? Those are the type of things that start to become really nebulous and fishy. And somebody who's starting a business, running a business, focused on profitability, it's just stupidity to focus on branding, not even caring how that's affecting your sales or your bottom line.
Thomas is teaching you exactly what we did too. We didn't start talking about branding until probably the last year and a half. And we are a pretty good company. We were in the Inc. 500. We were the third fastest privately held company in Utah, or number 2 in Utah, number 3 for advertising and marketing. And so to think that we did all that without really ever going the branding angle shows that what he's talking about is true. And then if you put these same practices into place, you can have similar results.
It's like we often say, we'll run marketing that will get a good engagement, and people will say, hey, I don't like that. That's not my brand. And what do you always tell them, Zach?
You don't have a brand.
And while it is true they're building their brand right now, your focus needs to be on revenue, not building a brand and having some marketing with this flashy branding that's not going to generate any sales and is going to get you nowhere.
You know how you get a good brand? You generate a lot of revenue and you deliver a great product to your earliest adopters. That's how you start to build a brand.
Absolutely. So yes, email list in terms of marketing, I would say, unless you're this massive brand, it is going to be your email list. Because once you have that, you can continue to market to these people again and again and again.
Well, there you have it. Set your website up the right way. You got to have those realistic expectations. Go for a cost per acquisition of break even. If you can get better, all the power to you. Think in terms of multiples, multiple SKUs, multiple channels, multiple places to sell your product, and then embrace an email list. That needs to be the first thing that you start doing, because that will be your company's number one asset before your branding comes into play.
Even though we've talked about it's not as easy as it might look, you can't just throw it on your website, don't ever let that discourage you from starting a business. If anything, there's always going to be hurdles to have to figure out. And that's the power of starting a business, right? Because the greater the barrier to entry to a new product, a new offering, the better chances you might have to success because of other people being able to get into the space. In a way, I feel we spoke about a handful of things saying, hey, you can't have one product, one SKU just on your website with only one cell, it's not going to work. Don't let that stop you. Let that simply help you think about, how do I need to think about my strategy? How do I need to think about my brand? How do I need to think about what I do, say on Amazon, in conjunction with my own company website? Let these be items that get you thinking.
Just like that entrepreneur I was talking about, where he has one product, but he's already thinking now in terms of 2, 3, 4 down the road and creating multiple SKUs and a brand around it, just like Nomadic has done with their lifestyle brand, where they were just a wallet. And for all Thomas and I knew, that was all they were ever going to be. But now they've got, 9, 10, 11 different products that they sell. All right. It is our favorite part of the show again, the Funded Today Products of the Week. We're going to give a little bit of a twist on it this week. Last week, Thomas featured Last Swab. This week, I'm going to feature Last Swab. We both thought it was so cool that we figured it needed multiple features, and we want you to go take a look at it because we're excited about this one. This might be Funded Today's greatest pre-launch campaign ever. At the time of this recording, it's raising thousands of dollars every little bit. So it's exciting to just go to Kickstarter and refresh the page and watch all the pledges coming in. Just a recap of what this product is. This is a reusable, pretty much indestructible, although it can be biodegradable as needed, cotton swab. Think of a Q-tip, but the last Q-tip that you will ever need, hence the name Last Swab. The reason this is so important is because the environment is getting polluted. There's about 1.5 billion of these Q-tips used every year, and they end up in landfills or they end up in oceans. And I love the image on Last Swab's Kickstarter page. You got to check it out. It shows this fish or this squid or something, and it's got a Q-tip like wrapped around its mouth or something, and it just looks terrible and sad. And it says problem, and it points down to it, and then a little arrow pointing to the left says solution, and it just shows this beautifully crafted, mechanically designed, just absolutely amazing Q-tip, for crying out loud. I know I sound absolutely in love with it, but I am. And it's such a good idea. It's washable. It is very strong. It has medical grade silicone, and so it won't get disgusting as you use it multiple times. And you can literally just wash it off, and in just a little bit, it's ready to use again. So such a great idea, and I love that they're trying to help protect the earth and make just the world a little bit better place to live in. So check it out. Last Swab, Kickstarter. I think you will love it. Thomas, what do you got for us?
My product of the week is the Golden Milk Chocolate Revolution by Endorphin Foods. It's a plant-based chocolate bar. It's made with turmeric. I guess they call it their signature formula that has caramelized coconut milk and coconut sugar. I like this. I'm a vegan myself and have been for almost 2 years now. You get turmeric, cardamom, black pepper, caramelized coconut milk, and it has 40% cacao. So if you're into chocolate, organic chocolate, veganism, check it out. It's called Golden Milk, and milk is spelled with a Y instead of an I. So that's MYLK. Golden Milk.
So there you have it. Life after crowdfunding. We love this series. If you've got something else you want us to talk about in this series, let us know in the comments. Today's episode, how to turn your website into a cash machine. Let us know what you thought about it, and put even just some of these actionable tips in play. And soon you're going to have a website that you can build a sustainable business upon. If you got something valuable in this episode, like I said, please leave us a comment on our website and give us a review on iTunes. We love hearing from you. We get weekly updates, and that's probably my favorite part of the week, is just reading what you, our listeners, say about this show and what you're learning and how we've helped you. It makes me really happy. We get a lot out of that. Remember, next Wednesday, we've got another out-of-the-box episode for you. We're going to be talking about freedom and how you can finally achieve everything you ever wanted to achieve in your business and in your personal life. It's another one of those audacious type titles, but we think by understanding this concept of multiple freedoms, you're going to really, really impact your life, not just your business, but your life. You're not going to want to miss this one. And remember, don't wait until tomorrow. Get funded today.
Funded Today is the worldwide leader in rewards-based crowdfunding on Kickstarter and Indiegogo. Combined, they have raised over $200 million and counting for thousands of new ideas and inventions worldwide. If you've got an idea for a new product or invention, visit fundedtoday.com to speak with one of their experts.